You all have been watching the first fancy beads video a lot, so I was thinking this may be a perfect summer craft or winter if you are on the other side of the globe. And then I thought you may also need some spacer beads to go along with those fancy beads. So come on, let's make some incredibly cool spacer beads. And first I'm testing the direction of the fibers by bending the cardstock. And you can see this way I get a bit of resistance and this way it goes really smoothly. That means that's the direction I want to roll my beads. So I'm going to turn my cardstock and cut it in this direction. And when you make your paper beads yourself, you can make them any size you want to. So I'm just going to use the guidelines on my ruler to cut strips in several sizes. So here I have 4 different sizes. And because I want my paper beads to be thin, I'm going to cut those strips in half. You can also take a big sheet and cut that in half. That's a good idea as well. That saves you a bit of cutting time. So once I have all my strips, I'm going to start making a bead. So I'm going to roll my strip around the skewer and move it back and forth a bit. So it stretches the paper and it starts to roll smoothly. And then I'm going to just roll it around that skewer. And then I'm going to add some glue. And I keep on rolling until at the end, and there I'm going to add some more glue. I spread the glue a little bit with my finger and then I'm going to roll the bead up further and then press it down so it stays in place. And there you go, a great base for a spacer bead. And in case you have some trouble getting it straight, you can always take something flat and press on the side. And that will de-wonky that bead very easily. Now these are going to be incredibly cool spacer beads, no polish colored beads. And if you want to know more about that, go do your homework and watch the first video. It even has a free guide. Then I have some metallic Kraft stock. And I'm going to add some double-sided adhesive to the back of the Kraft stock. And then I'm going to cut some strips in the same sizes that I used for my beads. And I have some silver strips, but you can also use the gold that's in the same pack. And next I'm going to use one of those beads to measure the size and cut that off the strip. You can use the complete strip too if you want to. I'm cutting my strip into pieces. And then it's time to grab your embossing folders, and the ones that work best for this technique are the ones with really fine details, like the ones that I'm showing here. Then I add the different size strips in the embossing folder and I'm going to run it through the machine. And this is what they look like after embossing. So I'm going to peel off the backing of the double-sided adhesive and then I'm going to add the embossed Kraft stock to the bead, just rolling it around with a little bit of overlap. I cut off the excess bit. And then I'm pressing down that seam to make it nice and flat. And of course I'm going to do that with the other ones as well, just in the same way. Dressing up my black beads, and this makes the nice base. In case you have some trouble lining up that embossed strip, you can put the bead on your desk and then just wrap the strip around it, pressing it down to the desk as well. And that's a simple way to line it up too. And while I was at it, I also cut some shapes out of chipboard and out of the Kraft stock. I embossed that Kraft stock as well and I'm gluing those pieces together. And I have 2 pieces of each shape.
What are you going to do with that? Those aren't beads.
Now be patient, I need them and I will show you. But first on with those beads. I have some black paint that I'm adding to my desk. I have a sponge, some simple fine hole sponge, nothing fancy. So I'm just going to pick up some paint with my sponge and then just coloring the bead all the way around. And the next step you have to do straight away, I'm going to wipe off the paint, but just the top layer. So the paint that's in the cracks or in the creases, that's staying, which will bring out that embossed pattern and it gives you this super cool vintage metal-like effect. And you can decide how much paint you want to take off or how much you want to stay on. And I really like this effect with the black paint on the gold Kraft stock, which was pretty shiny, but after it had its black paint treatment, I really like it. And I'm going to do the same thing with that circle. And while the paint is wet, you can still wipe off some more if you want to. So here I have my pile of silver beads and I have some gold beads. And I also have some different shapes.
Wow, you've been busy!
First I'm going to go on with those shapes because these need to dry. I'm going to add a layer of Glossy Accent. So I'm just adding my Glossy Accent over the top of that layer, making sure I don't miss the sides. And I also did the other shapes and I'm going to put that aside to dry. And so here are the spacer beads up close. You can use them like this or you can add another layer. So I'm just adding them to a skewer again. And then I have Distress Resist Spray. And I'm going to spray those beads all around. Make it a nice thin layer so it dries clear. And I'm just putting them in my little box so I don't have to hold them while they are drying. Let me tell you something about the Resist Spray. I think it's the same or similar to diluted Glossy Accents, as it feels exactly the same when you have it dried on your fingers.
It's totally weird.
You can also use your Glossy Accents to add another layer, but that's a little bit more fussy, because you have to make the layer really thin or else it will drip off. And then you can put that aside to dry as well. And besides the thin ones, you can also make a thick one from a complete strip of cardstock. That will give you a bit of a bigger size. And yes, you can glaze them like the fancy beads with embossing powder. I just wanted to show you some different options, in case you run out of embossing powder or because you want to try something else. And here are my little shapes back after drying, and they look really nice. So I'm going to glue 2 of those layers together. And I do that with all of them, of course. And then I'm going to punch a little hole. Now, in case you are curious, do I like this tool? No, I don't. It's made for man hands, like big, huge men with enormous hands, and not for regular size female hands or smaller. And after a tennis elbow and a mouse arm, a crocodile hand is the next modern world injury. But I needed that hole. And now the question, what are you going to do with those beads? You can make something like this, a nice keychain or dangling thing. Now I'm going to make a few more of these that will give me a head start on my Christmas presents. I hope you enjoyed watching. Leave the thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to see more, here's some more inspiration. And as always, make sure to keep on crafting.